If you're anything like me, you started out in business just wanting to make cool stuff and get paid for it. In my case, that was videos, but for other creatives, that might be websites, graphics, music, whatever. But at some point, it becomes apparent that the business side of business needs to be figured out. And in order to truly scale a creative business, there's often one big thing that gets in the way. And my guest today is going to share more. G'day my friends, I'm Ben Amos from Engage Video Marketing, and on this channel I share tips, tricks and strategies to help you engage your ideal audience to action through effective video marketing strategy. And this episode is an episode from the Engage Video Marketing podcast, which we're now bringing to you here on YouTube as well. So I'd love to hear in the comments below what you think of these full-length video episodes here on YouTube as well. But of course, you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts as well. So in this episode, we're going to be exploring what it really takes to scale a creative business, and importantly, what's holding many of us back. And let me tell you, there was so much shared in today's interview that I resonated with so deeply in my own business journey. So I reckon there's a thing, or maybe even 7 things, that will resonate with you too. So my guest today is my friend and legendary video business coach, Den Lennie. Den is a coach who helps video business owners reach 6 and 7 figures in their business. And this allows them to create the life that they want on their terms, only working with great clients who collaborate and pay them what they're worth. So in this episode, we're going to explore some of the big things that hold creative business owners back from having the business that they want. We'll also share what Den looks for when he coaches his clients to identify the real opportunities for business growth. And we'll talk about what it means to scale a creative business and what that potentially means for you and where you could be headed in your life. Yep, big stuff and super valuable stuff. So enough from me. Let's jump into the interview with Den Lennie. Den Lennie, welcome back to the Engage Video Marketing podcast.
Thank you, Benjamin. It's been a little while.
Well, it's been a little while since we spoke on the podcast. Before we hit record here, I mentioned to you, I had to look it up. It was episode 105. We talked about systemization in a video business, and that was all the way back in August 2019.
Wow.
A lot has happened in the world since then.
It has. Thankfully, it's not been that long since I've seen you. We actually do live relatively close to each other, so we do catch up for lunch now and again, which is always a pleasure. In fact, just last week we had Simon Banks, who I believe has also been on your show, drop into town. So we had a nice bit of lunch and catch up with Simon. So yeah, it's great to be back.
Absolutely. It's always great to catch up with other video strategists who listen to this podcast, particularly those from the other side of the world who decide to go on a bit of a trip to Australia. So if anyone listening to the podcast, it's just a little side note here, anyone listening to the podcast who's in Australia, look me up. Let's hook up. So anyway, let's talk about what we're here today. But what I wanted to do is bring you on because, you know, I know from knowing you quite well that you have massive expertise and experience in helping video business owners scale their business. And your podcast is how to scale a video business. So, you know, that ties in nicely there. But what I wanted to do today was to just talk more generally to creative business owners who may be listening to the show about some of the things that they can look for in getting their business to the place that they want it to be. But before we get into that, can you just give us a quick rundown on who you are for people that haven't yet listened to episode 105, haven't come across Den Lennie before?
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, that's embarrassing that you haven't listened to episode 105 along with the other ones, but we'll let that go on this occasion. So yeah, I have a nearly 3-decade career in video production. And in 2015, I moved from the UK to Australia, set up a small production company in Sydney, and then we decided we wanted a different lifestyle. And so as a creative business owner, I shifted gear away from actually doing the thing to helping others make more money doing the thing. And a couple of years ago, we moved up to Queensland here, and we now live in the Sunshine Coast, very close to Ben and his family. And yeah, we now primarily help video business owners create reliability in their business systems, consistency in their marketing, and create wealth using their creative assets. And while we specifically work with video companies, pretty much everything I'm going to share would be just as applicable to any creative business.
So I think you have a unique experience yourself, Den, where you have run your own and set up your own creative business, both as a freelancer and, you know, having staff working for you, and then you've now kind of moved into more coaching creative business owners as well. So you kind of got that both sides of the coin in your experience. So let me ask you, just the big question to start us off here is, what do you think's the biggest thing holding creative business owners back from scaling their business?
That's a great question, Ben. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. And my answer may not be popular, but the biggest problem facing business owners is the person staring at them back in the mirror. Because I think that, and it's not entirely your fault. So I want to caveat that. Whilst I believe fully that everything that happens in our life, good, bad, or otherwise, is our responsibility, I think creative business owners have an extra challenging time of embracing business. And I think that's mostly because, you know, left side, right brain, you know, that whole kind of idea of one being more creative and one being more kind of logical. I think as a creative, we're largely focused on creating ideas, fluidity, you know, refreshing ideas, making sure everything's new. Business actually needs sustained consistency. It needs repetition. And I think it makes it extra hard for creative business owners because they have to disconnect the ability to think of something new when running their business so they can do things consistently. So what I mean by that is business is really a series of monotonous tasks repeated consistently and repetitively and measured and adjusted. And so as a creative, when we go into any kind of project, we want to do something new and fresh and exciting and draw from experience. And therefore, anything we do in business that feels like we're repeating ourselves, we can have a tendency to try and change it, to try and make it new and fresh and exciting. And I think that's what causes the biggest, you know, hurdle in growing a business, because instead of just doing one thing consistently, we try and do one thing 25 different ways and wonder why we're not getting results.
Yeah, there's a saying, and I can't really recall who to credit it to, but boring is profitable in business, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's spot on. But as a creative, and I'm speaking from my own experience here as well, and my own feelings around this is we didn't get into business to be boring. You know, we didn't start this to be bored, or else maybe we would have, I don't know, gone to a business broker and bought a business that was sustainable and, you know, predictable, and maybe just gone down that path. But none of us, I believe, that are in or started a creative business did it for that reason. So do you think that, you know, apart from that maybe squirrel syndrome that I'm talking about there, or that idea of wanting to do things more exciting and more interesting, do you think that there's any unique problems that creative business owners have that are stopping them from getting the business that they want?
So first of all, I believe that business can be very creative. I think the idea of thinking of every client as an individual, and you have the tools and the ability to help them achieve something really unique for them. I believe that as a business owner and as a coach and mentor, I see it with the clients I work with, you know, really understanding what your client wants and giving them that is a very creative process. So that's the first thing I'd say to that. The second thing that I think is unique to creative businesses, which makes it more challenging, is creatives are, by their very nature, slightly radical. You know, we don't like to sort of confine in the normalcy of business in life. We always want to kind of play outside the lines. And so I think where the obstacles come in scaling a business is perhaps sometimes spending a little too much time married to your creative process and your creative idea, and not enough time truly listening to what the client actually needs and wants. And I think that, you know, there's something called the hierarchy of business needs, which I think was created by Seth Godin. And he talks about when you're talking to different clients, understanding where that client is. If they're a marketing manager of a corporation, they're not thinking about ROI or profit or even necessarily potentially creativity too much. They want to know, in order of priority, are you going to deliver on time? Are you going to deliver within budget? Is the idea going to be on brief? And is the process going to be easy and fun? I think that a lot of corporates, and I'm painting with a very broad brushstroke here,
Yeah.
are a little scared of creativity in case it goes too far the wrong way. And so the businesses that I see succeed significantly, and I'm talking high 6 and 7 figures in a creative process, they add a lot of energy to the creative process, but they very much are listening to and are tuning into the marketing manager who's hiring them to understand what they really need and want, and not pushing too hard down the line of, well, if we just did this and did that, it would be amazing. Because I think in a lot of cases, the broader market doesn't really care too much for the fine detail. They just want to know, are you a safe pair of hands? Are you going to deliver on time? And I think within that, you can still be hugely creative and enjoy the process. You know, I love the human side of creativity, working with cool people, translating an idea from inception into delivery, and hopefully, you know, giving the client way more than they ever imagined.
Yeah, I really like the way you've brought that up there, Den, because I think the way that I see it as well, and that you mentioned there, is yes, boring is profitable. So yes, you know, delivering what a client needs, really listening to what they need. Chances are you're going to be more profitable in a project. You're going to, you know, build stronger relationships with clients because they know that you deliver, right? You deliver what they want. But I also love that you mentioned that there's still opportunity to be creative, you know, because that's ultimately what we wanted to do. But it's about having a system for that creativity so that you've got clear sign-off, you've got clear understanding from the clients about why you're doing what you're doing, so that there's none of that surprises, which is scary for a lot of business owners. I'm recalling a podcast interview with Guy Bauer from Umalt, who highly creative video studio over in the States. And I can't remember the podcast episode. I'll try and look it up. It was episode 189 of the podcast. So you can go and check that out if you like. But he talked about the way that they've been able to really systemize the creative process to deliver beautiful creative projects profitably that the clients love and really ticks all the boxes. So I think that's exactly what you're talking about there.
Yeah, I think also what I'd add to that is, you know, I've got a client in the US, Pat, and when Pat and I started working together a couple of years ago, he was still very heavily involved in the hands-on. He's got an amazing production business in Boston. And Pat was still very involved in the editing and still involved in production. And he said, oh, you know, I'm not sure that I can do this. You know, I don't know if I want to run the business. I don't want to lose touch with the creative process. And I encouraged him over time. It's funny, quite funny actually, because 2 months into the program, he wanted to quit. He's like, oh, I think I've got enough. And I'm like, let's just have a chat. And 2 years later, he's still here. And we laughed about that situation recently. Is that he had this idea that the creativity he experienced was because of the creative process, because of the filming and the editing. But in truth, he started to love the business process. And as he scaled his business and put in some systems and he started hiring people, he started easing off the edits, and he went from just like being involved to, I'll just do a quick check. And I said, like, just get off that, like put a system in place, trust your team. And now he doesn't touch the editing. And he said to me just recently, he said, you know, I've really started to enjoy the creativity of business. And I never thought I would. I thought that by not doing the actual thing, be that in his case it was editing, but it could be illustration, it could be graphics, he felt like he would lose that creativity. And the opposite happened. He found a love for business, a love for the creativity of business. And I honestly believe, and I know you are on this same trajectory, creating a business is the most exciting project you'll ever work on, because it's unpredictable. You never know which way it's going to turn, and yet you have entirely 100% control of the direction you take it in. And what I've learned over the last few years with all the disruption we've had is that's never been more important to me personally, is to run my own show. You know, we both live in an absolutely stunning part of the world. We have lunch fairly regularly. It's never a rush. We don't have to necessarily be anywhere at any given time. We've created both wonderful businesses that facilitate us spending time with our families, enjoying life. I know you love scuba diving, you love taking the kids to the beach, you had a great adventure in a camper van just a few months ago. And that really resonates with me because we're not running a lifestyle business. We're running a business that supports our lifestyle. And I think that's a very big distinction. So I believe that the process of creating that is highly creative and extremely rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more myself. And that journey that you described there, that Pat experienced, is exactly my own experience as well. So as I've got further into business over the nearly 13 years I've been running this business, it's running the business, it's growing the business that has become my passion. So much more than the creative output that I originally started doing. So absolutely resonates with me.
Well, I think also, we've both been involved in business masterminds independently and both run our own business masterminds. And that to me is one of the most creative areas, is working with other business owners and helping them unlock that process for themselves is the most rewarding thing beyond any financial compensation that you exchange for that value. It's the fact that you see people making breakthroughs. And I think being part of business masterminds, and you talked about this in an episode recently, the power of a mastermind, it's exponential. The return on investment is exponential because yes, you get great value from the process that's described, but it's all the stuff in between the lines that you don't realize that start to get filled out during these processes that opens up a deeper sense of connection with creativity. And creativity doesn't need to mean just being like, painting a picture on a paper. But what's interesting, Ben, is that I've got an amazing setup here that I love working in every day. But I also have a load of great photography gear. And so I have this amazing business that I love working in. But I also have more time now to go and take photographs for fun or print them out in my nice Canon P1000 printer there and make some beautiful prints. Like the one that, well, if you're watching this video, there's a print behind me on the wall there. And I frame them up and I'm actually, weirdly, I'm spending more time doing the passion thing now than ever before. But my business isn't a photography business. My business is a business helping video production companies to scale and have all the things they want in life. And that allows me time and space and the resources to have a full camera full of 5 or 6 camera bodies, 5 or 6 lenses, all the gear I could possibly ever want. It's all the best stuff. And I go out and I take photographs and I print them out and I have a lot of fun doing that. And so I think that, that is where you want your business to work for you. You don't want to work for your business.
Yeah, I love that. Great perspective on things. I'm interested for your perspective, though, as a coach working with creative business owners over the many years that you've been doing this. What is the first things that you're kind of looking for if you're diagnosing where that current creative business is at and how to figure out where the opportunity is to really scale and grow that business? What are you looking for?
So I start in a very unusual place. I ask the client to get very deep on what they want, and I get them to create a vision board. And actually, I just did a video on this on YouTube recently about, my vision board and how they've become reality in a short space of time. So I ask, and this is a really great process for any creative. It's like literally get pages or a PDF document and literally drop images of things that inspire you, about life, love, relationships, friendships, desires for cars, houses, holidays, it doesn't matter what it is, and put it on a piece of paper and print it out and literally stick it up in your eye line. And that is the first process we get everyone to do. It's like, what does success look like to you? Because I love the fable of the Mexican fisherman. I'm sure your listeners and viewers know that story, but in a nutshell,
Fill us in. Give us.
So the Mexican fisherman story is I believe it's an American is visiting Mexico, and he's a city banker, and he comes across this guy sitting in a fishing boat, and he's he's just come back from his catch and he's caught a few fish, and he's like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" "Well, I catch these fish and I take some home and I sell some to the restaurant. Then me and my friends sit around all afternoon and we kind of play cards and have a few drinks, and that's my life, and I do it every day." And this business guy was like, "Well, you know what? If you like went to the bank and got a loan and bought 5 or 10 boats, you could be out with 10 of these guys, give everyone a job, and fish every day, and you could like turn this into a great business. You could start to do wholesale. You could ship it all over the country." And he said, "And then you could sell that, and you could cash out, and you could make millions." And he said to the guy, "Well, what would I do?" And the investor said, "Well, you could do whatever you wanted. What would you do?" He said, "Well, I'll probably go out on my fishing boat every day, catch a few fish, enough for me and the family, and enough for my friends, and I sit around the pub all afternoon, drinking and playing cards." He's like, "Why would I want to go to all that hassle of like doing all that work?" So I think what I love about that is, although it's a simplified example, it's true. Like, what do you really want out of life? Like, what is important to you? To me, I live 400 meters to the beach. I don't work crazy hours. I spend a lot of time with my wife and my dogs. I go to the gym 3 times a week. I get to catch up with friends like yourself for lunch. We've got a bunch of people on the coast here who we connect with and hang out with in the entrepreneurial space. And I get to go to the garden centre. I've just started getting into bonsai. I love my photography. And I love working with my clients. And so I got very clear on what success looked like to me. And, I drive a nice car. I get to travel in comfort when I fly anywhere. I can go and stay in nice hotels. We can do nice things. So that was success to me. So what I get my clients to do is get really clear on what success looks like to them. And then the next step is we do an audit of their current business. Where does the money come from? Who are the clients you love to work with? Where is the biggest profit opportunity in your business? And then you're left with a gap between the audit, which is the reality of where you are right now, and the goal, which is a successful life on your terms. And in the middle is a gap. And so what we have to do is then fill that gap with a strategic plan that will take you through steps of working out, well, where are your most profitable clients? They generally are the ones that treat you the best and that you enjoy working with the most. A lot of creative businesses are not good at saying no to let's be honest, the crappy clients who are not necessarily respecting your time and paying you what you're worth. And so if you cull the bottom 10% of your clients and focus more on the clients that you really like working with, and then you go through the discipline of channeling your energy into one target, one offer, one market, you can make $1 million. And then you can have your version of the Mexican Fisherman story come to life. And people are often surprised how little money you have to turn over if you're profitable to have a really comfortable life. And for me, quality of life and wealth is not just financial, but it's time, money, and freedom. Have I got the time to enjoy the things that I love? Have I got the money to be able to fund it? And am I truly free? Because a lot of business owners are financially very well off, but have no time because they're always working and they're panicking about the business falling over. For me personally, I think you've got to get the balance right. And that balance is totally different to each individual. But I believe that is my kind of simplified process. Figure out what it is you want and write it down and be very, very specific. And release some of those childhood, perhaps limiting beliefs on what you feel you're worth. Get very clear on where you are in your business now, and then work out a strategic plan to execute that. And then probably, realistically, have some accountability. It's quite hard to do this on your own. I know you're in a mastermind. I'm in a mastermind. I think you always need, A players need a coach. A players need someone to turn to ask. And I also love being in a room where I'm like not the smartest guy in the room. I like being in a room where everyone's doing way better than me, because that helps me lift my game. And I think that's where every creative should be, in a room somewhere where they're having their game lifted.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of reverse engineering the business that you want it to be. And I think you brought it up really nicely there, Den, the idea that even though we titled this episode around scaling a creative business, what does that end game of scaling mean, right? Because you've painted a picture there of, if you're not clear on what the business needs to look like for you to have the life that you want it to be, then you might think that in order to be successful in business, you need to scale, right? You need to continue to grow, continue to, reach high new people and reach higher, sales goals and so on. But then if you're not clear on where you're going, how will you ever know whether you've achieved what you wanted to achieve, right? Yeah. So, and for some people, they might actually have a realization if they do this vision board exercise or are really clear on what they want from life, that they don't want to own a multinational company on the stock exchange with thousands of employees, like that's not scale to them. So I really love that. And I would dare say that many creatives probably don't want that. They probably don't want that big
they
scale
want
of a business.
Fulfillment and joy and satisfaction and to be appreciated for the work that they do. And I think that you can still do that and make a very, very good living. I'm talking, the kind of salaries that doctors and lawyers make. I mean, that is absolutely possible. I was watching a video this morning, albeit about a junior doctor. It was a junior doctor on YouTube who was comparing their income as a year 3 graduate in the NHS in London and versus that in Australia. And in a nutshell, they were earning about $25 an hour in the UK. And in Australia, it was nearly like $45 an hour for less hours. And I was like, oh, geez. I think she was earning about $50,000 a year as a junior doctor in the UK. And I was like, that's an interesting number because they've trained at medical school for 7 years and 3 years into their career, they're earning $50,000 a year. I thought that was fascinating. And I think as an entrepreneur, if you help people solve problems, and particularly creating creativity, I believe firmly you can charge a premium price for your offer and your service that delivers exceptional value to your clients, and they're happy to pay it. And that then funds your ability to have the life you want. And for many, many years, I grew up in a kind of pretty working class family. We didn't have a ton of money. So I think my background was one of, who do you think you are with your fancy ideas of owning nice cars and doing nice things and traveling business class or doing whatever. But I've worked on that psychology of I am worth it. That is my happy place. I'm very specific. I love to fly when I do long haul in business class. And I made a pledge in 2013. I put it on my vision board, and I haven't flown in anything but that class of travel since. And that was a real kind of goal of mine. And I got that from a very wealthy friend of mine who hired us back in 2010 to do a workshop in Dublin. And he said, Den, you have to get very, very specific about what you want from life. And I'm like, well, I'd like to travel. And he's like, what class of travel? I'm like, well, premium economy. He's like, why don't you want business class? Well, because I thought it was a waste of money, because I grew up in an environment where you didn't waste money because there wasn't a lot of money around. And so I think that's a big driving factor. And I think that that's something that maybe resonates with some creatives listening to this show, is that we don't deserve to a lot of money for what we do, rather than looking at the value that we bring and pricing it appropriately. Why is it some artists, I have an artist around the corner from me, a friend of mine, Michael Cook, who's a very big, well-known artist around the world, and his pieces sell for tens of thousands of dollars. Why is it his photograph sells for tens of thousands of dollars, whereas someone maybe listening to the show is selling a piece of work for $100? And it's the same technology to take the photograph, just a different interpretation. And so I think that we often don't put enough value on ourselves as creatives, which then means we don't want to charge too much for our services, because we think, oh, well, that would seem expensive. I wouldn't want to feel like I'm ripping anybody off. I've heard this many, many times in the thousands of conversations I've had with creators. I don't want to charge too much. I don't want to seem like I'm ripping anybody off. And I think that's a very interesting psychology, and has more to do with that person looking at you back in the mirror than anything else. Because if you provide a valuable service that helps solve a problem, then as a business owner, you are morally obliged to make the maximum profit for the business with the least amount of effort. Because if you had shareholders, that's what they'd expect you to do. And I think that's an area that can often grate a little bit with creatives, this idea of money and art and or commerce and art, and how it kind of feels like it muddies the waters. But I don't believe it does. I believe that if you're really passionate about what you do and you genuinely believe you offer a great product or service, then you should be charging as much as you can for that.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a really important block or thing that holds so many people back in creative businesses. And this is obviously my assumption and interpretation and my own experience, right? But I think in other industries, in, for example, construction and trade and even retail and selling products, it tends to be easier to price what the market accepts, right? And obviously that can vary very widely based on the industry that you're working in. But I think when it comes to creative business in particular, you really can't be basing what you do on time and materials, because in many cases materials are negligible. It's mostly time, but even more than time, it's the creativity. It's whatever that certain thing is that you bring as a creative to the work that you do, or that your team brings as creatives to the work that they do. And, at the end of the day, as you touched on before, what that also needs to align to is what's the value that allows for the end client, right? What does that do for their business? What does that do for their life? And if we're trying to base what we charge on time and materials, it doesn't factor in any of that stuff, which is really so much more aligned to the businesses that we're growing here.
I agree, and I think you're absolutely right. There is definitely a challenge in the, if you hire a lawyer, lawyers are going to be X number of hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour, and they bill for 15-minute increments. I think creativity, has as much value. It just doesn't solve as painful a problem. If you're getting a lawyer involved, usually there's something pretty significant going on, and therefore, the bigger the problem, the bigger the pain, the more you'll pay. But I do think that you can reframe that. I think it comes down to self-worth and channeling that in a way. And I have a client of both of ours, actually, Caleb, who is very good at asking a client to describe the problem they're trying to solve. And he'll dig deeper into that and say, so if you sell 5 of these at this much money, you're going to make this much money, and you only want to spend this much money on a video. That doesn't seem like the kind of thing that makes any sense. Would you agree? I mean, this sounds much more like a $20,000 problem than a $5,000 problem. So would that make sense to do this properly and find more money? And then people come back and go, oh yeah, thanks for that. I hadn't thought about it that way. And so I think that and that just comes with confidence and practice and experience. Having those kind of conversations with clients where you assume the position of alpha in the conversation, not in an alpha male sense, but as in an authority sense. If you are someone who has a creative business that has been in business a while, you've more than done your 10,000 hours, you are established, you have experience, you have a happy set of clients underneath your belt, and between your ears you have this entirely almost infinite database of experiences, creative ideas, and mechanisms to turn this problem into a solution. You can't just charge time and hours for that. You've got to be looking at the skill set to do it. I love the analogy. I think it was it's a dental analogy. I think it's something along the lines of, and I'm going to paraphrase, but you get a tooth extracted, and it costs you $800, and it takes under 5 minutes. And then you go, wow, $800 for 5 minutes work. And the dentist turns around and says, well, I can take longer if you want.
Yeah.
So I think we need to apply the same thing to a creative process. We have to start valuing ourselves, and that is our responsibility as creatives. We've got to be careful not to go down the path of, poor us, poor creatives. We're only creative. We don't want to charge too much. We have to kind of take control of that and decide if what we're offering is of true value. And if we believe that, then when you announce your price for a piece of work, you announce the price and then you stop and you say nothing. And the first person to speak will lose the kind of deal, as it were, So whenever you announce a price, like tell them your price, and say nothing, and then let them respond. And even if you sit there for a minute, just sit there for a minute. So these are skills, I believe, in kind of sales and marketing that you can apply to creativity. Um, if you want to make some money. And look, if you're in a creative business, then by default, the word business means you're not doing it for free. So why not go to work and make as much money as you possibly can in as short a pace of time as possible to allow you time and space to go and do some fun stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's this idea in business as you kind of grow, and as I've experienced it myself, is that at each new stage of business, there's new challenges that come up. You mentioned there that idea of getting better at sales. I think when we start in business, we're focused on our craft. I think it's in Michael Gerber's The E-Myth, he talks about the technician stage of the business. When you're focused on delivering the thing and getting better at your craft, and then there's that manager stage, and then the entrepreneurial stage. I think those are the three things that he talked about. But I'm really fond of this idea of, in business, next level, next devil. So it's the idea that
Yeah.
as you scale a business, it's different things that are going to be thrown at you as a challenge, and you need to develop in different ways as a business owner. So how do you see that concept of next level, next devil playing out as you've kind of seen and coached businesses to continue to scale to hopefully where they want to be?
I think it always comes back to that vision board. And what will happen is you do a vision board and you'll achieve it in less time than you think. And then you'll do another one. And so whatever we think our goals are, we get there and we're like, oh, actually, kind of, maybe I've got a different goal now. I think the key here is to continually audit yourself and be checking in on, I've reached or achieved this goal in my business. How does it feel? Sit in it for a while. So whenever we do a quarterly planning review, we spend time. I always say to my members, go and sit in a park or sit by the beach. Take yourself away from the office and bring a pad and paper and write down your accomplishments of the last 90 days and write down your lessons learned. And then from there, let's look at the strategic issues and work out what the next step needs to be for your goal. For me, it's all about sitting in the moment and being present and appreciating what you've achieved and working out what the next move is for you. So for me this year, it was about health and fitness. I got to a point where we bought this house on the coast, we moved in, and business was going great. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to focus on my health and fitness as an absolute priority. I've never done that before. And then I've just joined a new mastermind, and I'm really excited about that because it's stretching me again. I love reading. I love learning. I love watching cool things. I have this kind of thirst for knowledge, and I love taking experience and knowledge from other industries and putting it through a video lens and thinking, how can we apply this to a video business or any creative business? I think, one of the greatest resources we have as business owners and entrepreneurs is the fact that everything's been done before. There's no secrets to how to create wealth in a creative business. You just look at another business and go, well, which bits can I take from that? The greatest entrepreneurs in the world still have 24 hours in a day and still have to do all the things we have to do. They're not superhuman, but what they do differently is focus. And so I think that the biggest challenge that faces every single creative business owner listening to this show or watching the show is you're not where you want to be. If you're not where you want to be, I guarantee it's because of focus or lack of focus in one area. And the thing that I've learned is one market, one offer, one target, and all focus on that. Try not to have too many products. Like have one key product that you sell to one key market and just go deep. And I think with that, you'll find yourself with all of the clients you could ever want, having a great time with them, having clients that become lifelong friends. And to me, as someone who's creative, that's what matters to me. I mean, I'm genuinely friends with all my clients. Even though we have a commercial arrangement, there are people that I really care about. And that's the really creative thing, to actually be invested in people's outcomes and then see those outcomes become reality. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, you kind of remind me of that idea of, I think it was Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. And I think as creatives, we can, when we're head down and when we're focused on delivery, when we're focused on the creative output of our business, we're not taking that time to sit back and reflect and look at the vision and see where we want this thing to go and explore other ways to get there. You know, be open to new ideas, join masterminds, all of that stuff you've been talking about today, because that's where we can make changes, right? And really scale the business to whatever that scale looks like for us. So I really like the idea of, I think you said there that, you know, it comes down to focus. We're not really focused on what needs to happen. We tend to be bogged down in the day-to-day, right? And I've felt that.
You know,
I've done
the
that.
funny thing is, as artists and creatives, we start with a vision, an idea in our mind. We see the finished film or the finished painting or the finished graphic in our mind's eye.
Yeah.
We see it, and then we make it happen. So we are highly skilled at turning vision into reality. I think we are just shy at admitting to ourselves what we really want, and then achieving it. I think there's some degree of self-sabotage that goes on
Yep.
in achieving success, because if we get successful, maybe people look at us funny. Maybe people will judge us how perhaps we've judged others in the past about success. And you know, there's that whole thing where cartoons, you know, the baddie's always dressed in the person with the money's always the baddie. It's the bloated businessman or the robber with money on his back, and like somehow if you've got lots of money, you must have done something bad to get it. And I think certainly when I grew up, you know, my parents didn't have a lot of money, and there was definitely a sense of, oh, you know, those folk across the road, they've got a bit of money, but they're all right, really. You know, it wasn't. I didn't grow up in an environment where money and abundance and success was normalized. It was like they're rich. They must have a special skill, or maybe they've done something bad to get the money. You know, jokes about, oh yeah, the guy with the nice car, he's probably a drug dealer. You know, it's just like kind of throwaway comments that really actually influence our maturing as we grow up and grow older, to how we attack business. Because there's an infinite supply of cash out in the marketplace. Money flows. There's so much money in the world. There's never been more opportunity. If you're not making enough of it, it's because you're probably self-sabotaging somewhere. You're probably stopping yourself from achieving your true greatness. And you know what? It's okay to earn a lot of money doing what you do if you allow yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good wake-up call for a lot of people listening. We talked about the idea of, you know, achieving what you want to achieve in business and having that life that you've got on your vision board. And, you know, I think in many creative businesses, and I guess where I want to kind of end this conversation today is around the idea of, you know, what does the end game look like for a creative business? You start a business often as a freelancer, as a technician, and then maybe you scale, maybe you bring on some staff, you know, get some systems in place. Maybe that allows you to step back and have a bit more freedom. But what's the end game? You know, what's the exit plan that you see for creative businesses?
So I think we always go back to the vision, which is what do you want the exit plan to be? I haven't seen a great deal of creative businesses exit and be bought for a lot of money, and I'm not sure why that is. I'm going to take a guess that a lot of creative businesses aren't that saleable because there's too much reliance on the key person in the company. They're not often systemized, and the creative business owner has a somewhat inflated idea of what it's worth compared to what someone's willing to pay. So I believe that a really cool strategy is to have your creative business be a cash machine, where you can produce high quality work at a high rate and bring a lot of cash in without needing to have to kind of outlay a lot of cash. It's not like you're buying a ton of materials and having to kind of build something and prototype and have all this kind of R&D cost. So I think that one way is to turn it into a really great cash machine, but then take that cash and deploy it into other assets. And if you want a great book to read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a great one, Robert Kiyosaki. Another one is The Road Less Stupid, Keith J. Cunningham, which talks about building assets, revenue generating assets. So my own strategy is to generate income from the business that I run with in the coaching space, and some of the services we offer there, and then to invest that in residential properties around Australia, and have a portfolio of properties that I rent out, and we're buying a nice RV through the business, which is going to become an asset. We'll rent that out. So it's a combination of those books and also the 4-Hour Work Week, which is you can have all the lifestyle of a multimillionaire without having to buy everything and be a multimillionaire, you know. So there's all sorts of services now. If you buy a property, you can rent it out as an Airbnb or rent it out long term. Or, you know, Camplify here in Australia is the RV company we're going to use to buy the RV. We'll use it for work and then we'll rent it out when we're not using it. So we can have access to all of these toys and resources that work for us, which means that if I choose to not want to go to work that day, I can take a day off and so be it. And for me, like my wife and I went to get our haircut on Friday up in Noosa, and we just ended up spending the whole day out, and it was pouring rain. We had some lunch somewhere, and it's what started as kind of getting our haircut became a whole day off. And we were like, how great is this? It's Friday, and we just decided impromptu to take the day off. And to me, that is total freedom. I took Friday off, I took Saturday and Sunday off completely, and I had half of Monday off. So I had a 3.5-day weekend. And that's not uncommon for me to do that. And I still have a great business and work with great clients and still create great content. But for me personally, my vision of success is the ability to not go to work if I don't want to. And that's really key to me. That's my own version. So what I'd encourage anyone to do is think about what your own version of success is. And if you're interested, you can look at my YouTube channel at Den Lennie, and you'll see a video I made about my own journey with vision boards, and just how eerily accurate they are when you put that on a vision board. And actually, there's one particular clip in that video which I won't tell too much about, but we had a house on our vision board, and we ended up going to see that very house, viewing houses last year, and I had the vision board with me because I realized it was the same one. And I've got a picture of the vision board and standing in the house, and like I just took that house as a random off the internet. So the universe works in very mysterious ways when you get super focused in. So think of your life as a telephoto lens. Where do you want to go? Focus on that and use it as a set of blinkers. Don't let anything distract you from getting to that destination. And I think then you can have whatever you want.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And, you know, if you haven't got it clear from today's episode around that importance of having that vision and really knowing where you want to go in your business and why you're in this in the first place, then that's your call to action for this episode is go and take that time. You know, maybe that's taking out half a day or you know, buying a cup of coffee and finding a quiet spot in a park somewhere and getting clear on that vision, creating that vision board. And I think that's the key to scaling the business in the way that makes sense for you. So I really appreciate that kind of clarity and guidance there, and always love when you do a bit of coaching, whether that's coaching me or coaching via your podcast or your YouTube channel. So where can people find out more if they like what they heard today and want to get a bit more into Den's world?
Yeah, I mean, look me up on YouTube, Den Lennie, DenLennie. The website's the same name. I'm really building that YouTube channel this year, and we're starting out. We've got 50, 60 sort of, you know, views at the minute. It's really small. I'm hoping that'll grow. But actually, it doesn't matter because we're not really looking for thousands of people. I'm looking for, you know, I've got 49 places in my mastermind, and we've got 30 already. So there's 19 spots available. They will fill up. That's all I need to do everything I want to do in my life. So it's like the more clear you get on what you want and what you need to fulfill that, the more fun you'll have, and actually the more creative you'll end up becoming.
Yeah, awesome. So go and do that. We'll have links to Den's YouTube channel on the show notes for this episode at engagevideomarketing.com/236. 236. And when you do go to Den's YouTube channel, hit that little filter button in the top right and have a look at the oldest videos. Good for a laugh. I didn't tell you, Den, but I did that on your channel the other day. Because you've got videos going way back to reviewing some old camera gear and stuff like that back when you're in the UK. It was hilarious.
2000 and, I think it's 2004, 2005.
Yeah,
I helped.
You had a lot less grey in your beard
CVP,
back then.
Yeah, set up a YouTube channel. So I've been in it a little while. And again, I tell you, one last thing I'll leave you with. I've dipped in and out of it. And the client joined my program recently and he said, I found you on YouTube, but you weren't doing anything anymore on YouTube, so I thought you'd given up. And then I found your podcast. So, a number of times over the last few years, people have said to me, you used to do YouTube videos. You should do YouTube videos. And I had this blank, I don't know why, wasn't doing them. I think it's because I felt I had to produce them, and now I make them on my iPhone. And I actually even have a video on my channel going why I'm not using all this fancy gear to make my YouTube videos. And there's some really interesting comments under that video about people saying, actually, we like the fact it's unedited and raw. So, I think the thing I'll leave you with is that just be yourself in whatever capacity you can do that, because, everyone else is taken. But more than that, lean into being yourself, because people will resonate with you because of who you are, not what you say you can do. And I think that's been a huge lesson for me this year. Is just lean into who you are. Don't try and be something you're not, and just share your version of the world that you see, and that will attract people. And some of those people will become clients. And before you know it, you're, having a great life, and you're doing everything you ever wanted to do, and you are successful.
Love it, Den. Back to where we started with this episode, that it's often that person in the mirror that's holding you back. Get out of your own way, be yourself, and let your business grow. So, Den, thanks for joining me on the show.
Thank you, Benjamin.